Imagine a family unlike any you've ever seen. A man, 4 wives, and 18 children. This wasn't a hidden community tucked away in secrecy. It was a family stepping boldly into the spotlight of national television. The man at the center of it all, Kody Brown, and the show that changed everything. Sister Wives. When Sister Wives premiered on TLC in 2010, viewers were instantly hooked. At first sight, it appeared to be another offbeat reality show. Different, sure, but not dangerous. But in the first few minutes, viewers recognized they were watching something remarkable. Polygamy had been taboo in mainstream America for decades. People spoke of it in hushed tones, kept it behind closed doors, or linked it to scandal. And here was a family ready to open their doors, open their hearts, and say, "This is us. This is our life. This is our life." Grinning at the cameras, unveiling his wives individually. To him, this wasn't about entertainment. It was a mission. He wanted to show that plural marriage could work, that love could be multiplied, not divided. His vision was ambitious, to create the ultimate family, one tied not just by tradition, but also by strong love and devotion. The wives were introduced as characters in a book, each her own person, each her own strength, each her own struggle. Mary, the first wife, was history and loyalty. She had been with Kody from day one, the family foundation. Janelle, the second wife, was practical, rational, and steady, bringing some order to the chaos with her rational way of living. Christine, the third wife, was warm and lively. She adored being a mother, building traditions, and envisioning a large, happy home. Robin, the newest wife during the beginning of the show, was mysterious and intriguing. She was new, romance-filled, and soon became the focal point of Kody's narrative. For the viewers, it was like entering a whole other world. One moment, you were witnessing Kody deal with 4 relationships. The next, you were in the house with children scurrying around, meals being eaten, and laughter ringing down the corridors. It was dirty, disorganized, but oddly intriguing. Initially, most were listening out of curiosity. How on earth does this work? 4 wives? 18 children. Do they quarrel? Do they live all together? Do they get jealous? These were the questions propelling the ratings. But what continued to keep viewers watching wasn't the shock value, it was the humanity. This was still a love story, a family story, a struggle story, and a dream story, despite the unusual situation. The Browns introduced themselves as trailblazers. They wanted to make plural marriage mainstream, to demonstrate that it wasn't about abuse or secrecy, but about building a larger, more loving family. Kody regularly talked up equality, how he loved all of the wives equally, how all of the children were important in equal ways. And in those early episodes, this message stuck. People watched and were impressed by the Browns' courage. They observed a family attempting to live in integrity, however unorthodox their journey may have been. But even in the beginning, sharp-eyed fans noticed subtle hints of trouble. For example, during family interviews, Mary's expressions revealed a quiet sadness when Kody spoke too lovingly about another wife. Christine sometimes looked restless, her smiles not quite reaching her eyes. Janelle seemed distant, more focused on responsibilities than romance. And Robin's arrival clearly stirred up emotions the cameras couldn't ignore. Still, the dream was captivating. Kody presented his family as a grand experiment in love, and audiences couldn't look away. One of the most powerful hooks of Sister Wives was the contrast. It felt both normal and extraordinary at the same time. You'd see the wives cooking dinner, kids doing homework, family trips to the park, ordinary things that any viewer could relate to. But while it was happening, simultaneously, the very configuration of the family, for women and one husband, was something that the majority of people could barely envision for themselves. The series didn't just create entertainment, it created discussion. Over dinner tables, at work, and on social media, people were posing the question, could this possibly work? Could you actually share your wife or husband with other people? Would jealousy tear the family apart? Or could love really expand to encompass everybody? For Kody, the cameras provided him with the stage he had always desired. He loved the limelight, self-assured, charming, and sometimes melodramatic. To him, Sister Wives was not just TV, it was confirmation. It was evidence that his vision of plural marriage could be embraced, even celebrated by the world. He felt that he was introducing America to something revolutionary, a functioning plural family that was actually succeeding. And in those early seasons, many thought so too.
Viewers watched the children all laugh together, the wives sitting next to one another and Kody grinning like he'd found the key to bliss. It was like hope. It was like maybe, just maybe, love could actually be multiplied. But under the surface, there were rumors, little spats, subtle tensions, brief flickers of displeasure.
They were easy to dismiss at first, submerged by the vibrancy of the family's tale. But they were the first hints of something much larger, something that eventually would break the dream itself. Even so, in that initial chapter of their lives, the Browns reached an estimated 1,000,000 viewers. The audience did not merely look on, they engaged. They cheered for the family, argued over their decisions, and watched week after week to see how this very experiment in love would unfold. It was reality television gold, drama, education, and emotional roller coaster in one. Sister Wives' dream was no longer Kody's. It was all of ours, all of the viewers who wondered if love could exist in the most complex family tree reality television had ever produced. Behind every smiling face, there's a story the cameras don't always tell. For the wives of Kody Brown, that story wasn't always a happy one. It was one of sacrifice, loneliness, and quiet battles fought in the background of a plural marriage. On the surface, the Brown family appeared to be a tight-knit unit bound together by love and mutual belief. The wives sat together, laughed together, and informed the cameras that they were committed to the practice of plural marriage. But behind closed doors and after the cameras went dark, the reality started to emerge. Each wife was experiencing her own brand of hardships that would ultimately destroy the family. Mary was Kody's first wife, the woman who stood by him before the cameras, before the fame, and before the other marriages. She had given her heart to him completely. She would always hold a special place. In many ways, she did. She was the one who started this journey with him. But as the years passed and new wives entered the picture, Mary's role changed. She was moved from being the sole focus of Kody's attention to one of four. And for Mary, it was heartbreaking. She craved emotional intimacy, romantic intimacy, the sense of being chosen once more. But those times were few and far between. She sat far away from the others on screen, her voice muted, her smile stiff. Fans could sense it. They could sense her hurt. Perhaps the most heartbreaking part of Mary's story was her attempt to find connection outside the marriage. Her involvement in an online catfishing scandal showed just how deeply she craved love and attention. It wasn't about betrayal, it was about loneliness. Mary had reached a point where she no longer felt like Kody's partner, but more like a shadow in his world. Janelle was quite different from the rest of the wives. Practical, diligent, and self-sufficient, she did not require frequent affection or attention. Rather, she channeled her energy into caring for her children, handling finance, and maintaining the house. To most viewers, Janelle appeared to be the tough one, the one who did not require reassurance emotionally. But this was far from the truth. Janelle regularly conceded that her relationship with Kody was never highly romantic. The relationship was more of a partnership, one that came from mutual respect as opposed to passion. Though this had held for the initial years, as the household expanded and tensions intensified, Janelle found herself burdened by emotional distance. She observed as Kody poured his time and love into other areas, frequently toward Robin. For Janelle, who prized equality and fairness, this was a subtle betrayal. She did not scream, she did not bawl on tape as others did, but she pulled away. Her coping mechanism was by embracing her autonomy, creating her own life, and concentrating on her children. They admired her strength, but they saw too the despair of a marriage where the flame had burned out years before. Christine was the glue of the family, the warm, bubbly, caring wife who enjoyed making traditions, cooking, and mothering the kids. She longed for a big, cohesive family where all felt welcomed and loved. But that was not her reality. Christine freely confessed that jealousy was the biggest challenge for her. She attempted to embrace plural marriage, but when she saw Kody with his other wives, she felt invisible. Again and again, Christine's tears told the truth. She longed for a husband who noticed her, who prioritized her, who made her feel like the only one, at least sometimes. But with the passing of years, Christine increasingly felt overlooked. Kody regularly dismissed her concerns, forcing her to fight feelings of rejection on her own. She came to understand that family harmony wasn't everyone's idea, least of all Kody's. What Christine most desired, love and respect, was moving further and further out of reach. Eventually, her struggle would cause her to make the most extreme decision of all, to leave. But in those earlier years, her hurt seethed beneath the surface, disguised by her sunny smile. It all changed when Robin joined the family. Younger, romantic, and openly emotional, Robin infused fresh energy into Kody's world. He was smitten with her, and it did not go unnoticed. At the outset, fans picked up on the distinction in the way Kody interacted with her versus the other wives. He was more touchy-feely, more protective, more engaged. For Robin, it wasn't always easy for her either. Becoming part of an already established family with 3 wives and 12 children was overwhelming. She longed to be accepted, to fit in, but tension was created as a result of her presence. The other wives couldn't help but notice the favoritism, and the more they noticed, the more they resented Robin. Robin frequently expressed her desire to have the family get along, yet her relationship with Kody made it almost impossible. She was the favorite and the outsider, the wife who possessed Kody's heart, but also the wife who inadvertently contributed to the other's hurt. Each wife's fight was different, but collectively, they created a clear picture. Plural marriage was not as equal as it seemed. Although Kody professed to love each of the wives equally, reality spoke otherwise. Jealousy fermented, loneliness proliferated, and subtle resentment only intensified with each season. Viewers could sense it. They started taking sides, cheering for Christine, feeling sorry for Mary, admiring Janelle, or sticking up for Robin. The Browns were no longer a family. They had become players in an own life drama, each of the wives depicting a different page in the book of heartache. Behind the camera, it was even more real. Private interviews revealed tears, admissions, and pleas for reform. But Kody's attention was usually elsewhere, on keeping his vision of plural marriage, on clinging to the dream, as the foundation crumbled under his feet. By the time the fans finally realized the gravity of these struggles, it was too late. The harm had already been done. The wives were no longer bonded in faith and family. They were torn apart by hurt and unmet needs. What had started as an audacious experiment in love was gradually becoming an arena of emotions. Session 2 of this narrative unveils the greatest truth of all. The downfall of sister wives never occurred in just one night. It started here, in the quiet, in the isolation, in the unspoken challenges of 4 women who sought love but ended up broken in a marriage that only offered them fractions of it. Arguing is normal in every family, but in my family of 4 wives, 18 kids, and 1 husband at the middle, arguments don't erupt, they detonate. And within the Brown family, the fissures which had begun as whispers quickly grew into tempests no one could miss. The unity dream was slipping through their fingers. For years, the wives had struggled in vain in their own little corners, each waging personal battles of jealousy, loneliness, or favoritism. But eventually, those hidden personal struggles could no longer be concealed. The tension started to spill over into discussions, then into fights, and then into fights, and then into all-out brawls that were acted out in front of millions of television viewers. The first and loudest voice to crack the silence was Christine's. For years, she had worn a smiley face, smiled, laughed, tried to keep the family together with holidays and good cheer. But behind the smile was a woman who felt invisible. Christine yearned for something simple: attention, respect, and love from her husband. She yearned to be important, but Kody's attention was elsewhere much of the time. The more he spent with Robin, the more Christine felt left behind. The camera caught the anguish in her eyes, the break in her voice as she confessed, "I can't do this anymore. I don't feel loved." Her admission surprised fans like a lightning bolt. For the first time, a member of the Brown family was vocally questioning the very existence of their plural marriage. It wasn't jealousy, it was survival. Christine was at her breaking point, and she had the courage to speak it aloud. Mary's struggle had always been quieter, more hidden. She was the first wife, the original partner, the one who had been with Kody from the start. But as the years passed, she became more and more isolated. Their marriage, once filled with love, had dwindled into something cold and distant. When Mary attempted to rebuild that relationship, she was met with doors slammed shut. She craved affection, intimacy, even a glimmer of what they had once shared. But Kody appeared not to want to, or possibly not be able to offer it. Their marriage was so tense that when Kody eventually acknowledged he no longer felt married to Mary, viewers were stunned. But for Mary, the pain had started years earlier than that confession. She had been yelling silently for years, if only her voice never dared make a sound above a mere whisper. Her silent agony became part of one of the most tragic moments of the family's narrative, demonstrating how heartbreaking it is to be forgotten in your marriage. Janelle was always the placid, rational wife. She was not a drama seeker and tended to be the peacekeeper. But even Janelle had her breaking point. She saw her children feel ignored, her needs disregarded, and more energy spent in Robin's household. For Janelle, equality was important. She felt that all wives and all children should be treated equally. But what she witnessed was favoritism, a system in which Robin and the children received most of Kody's time. Janelle, usually so level-headed, started resisting. Her tone became more acidic. She confronted Kody directly, something viewers weren't accustomed to witnessing. And in those moments, viewers saw that even the most tolerant and pragmatic wife could no longer restrain herself when the balance of conditions tipped too much against her. And then there was Robin, the lightning rod of the Brown clan. To some, she was innocent, loving her husband and attempting to find her place within the family. To others, she was the reason the whole thing collapsed. Kody's preferential treatment of Robin became impossible to overlook. He was more loving towards her, more attentive, more there. The other wives noticed, the kids noticed, and the television audience noticed. Whether it was his intention or not, Robin was now the focal point of the drama. Arguments tended to come back to her, charges of favoritism, the other wives' resentment, and emotional wars that played out in strained family sessions. Robin would get teary-eyed, insisting she longed for harmony, but her presence served as a stark reminder of the profound fissures in the family. The turning point for the Browns was in their family sessions. What were once casual updates became arenas of conflict. Christine would vent her frustrations, crying as she said how unloved she was. Mary would stay quiet, face etched with pain, not contributing much, because she recognized that what she had to say didn't count with Kody anymore.
Janelle would confront the inequity, her voice more belligerent than in the past. And Robin, frequently tearful, would justify her position as part of the family while maintaining she wasn't the issue. Kody, the man who had once boasted of being a leader, was overwhelmed and on the defensive.
Rather than listening with compassion, he would argue back, finger-pointing, and accusing his wives of being insufficiently committed. The meetings did not conclude in answers, but in greater bitterness. The harmony he envisioned was further away with each conversation. What made things even more difficult was the effect on the children. 18 children, each trapped in the middle of their parents' wars. They witnessed tension, overheard arguments, and sensed the lack of peace in their homes. Some of the children aligned with their mothers. Others attempted to stand up for Kody, but all were burdened with the weight of the widening rift. The fans observed how frequently the older children spoke out, expressing frustration at the favoritism towards Robin's family. The cracks were no longer merely between Kody and his wives. The cracks were making their way across the entire Brown family. By this point, the cracks in the Brown family were no longer hidden. They had grown into full fractures. Christine's honesty, Mary's heartbreak, Janelle's defiance, and Robin's central role had created a storm too big to control. What had started as domestic struggles had now become public battles. The vision of togetherness, of multiplied love, was disintegrating before their eyes. And spectators, who had once respected the Brown family's bravery, now sat glued to their seats with a combination of shock and sorrow as the very foundation began to crack. The fights weren't arguments. Fights were indications of breakdown. The wives no longer were fighting to remain together. They were fighting to be heard, to be appreciated, to stay alive in a marriage that no longer provided them with what they needed. Session 3 was the watershed moment in sister wives' history. The illusion that had fascinated millions was reduced to shambles. The wives were not only fighting behind closed doors anymore, they were challenging, rebuking, and demanding change. And for Kody Brown, the husband in the middle of it all, this was a crisis he could no longer keep under wraps. The cracks had become confrontation, and confrontation was about to drive the family to the most dramatic splits reality TV had ever witnessed. Each end starts with one choice. For the Brown family, those choices did not all happen at the same time. Those choices came in waves. One wife after another told the men they could no longer remain in a marriage that produced more hurt than love for her. Quiet struggles turned into the most surprising splits in reality TV history. For years, the cracks deepened. Quarrels hung in the air. The kids sensed the strain. And the wives, every one of them, came to see they were no longer in the dream they had signed up for. The ideal of oneness and equal love was lost. And one by one, the women of sister wives started to step away. She was the first to go. For decades, she was the family's glue, the bubbly, caring wife who made up traditions and attempted to keep everyone in good humor. But even the strongest of glues won't stick when it's disregarded, dismissed, and taken for granted. Christine's turning point was when she realized she was no longer in a marriage with Kody. She admitted that she did not feel loved, that she did not feel respected, and that she could not continue sacrificing herself for a man who no longer appreciated her presence. Her move stunned both the family and the audience. On television, audiences saw her pack her belongings, take her children, and leave. She wasn't just leaving a husband, she was abandoning a whole lifestyle she had come to think was true. The bravery Christine demonstrated inspired millions. Women everywhere identified with her story, the agony of being overlooked, the bravery to pursue happiness, and the power to move into the unknown. Christine's departure was greater than a personal decision. It was a milestone that established the Brown family's aspiration had fallen apart. Once Christine left, everyone wondered, would the other wives be next? The answer was Janelle. Janelle was always down to earth, solid, and less sensitive than the others. She tolerated the imbalance for years, looking after her children and maintaining her autonomy. But Christine's courage ignited something within her. She knew she deserved better too. Her union with Kody had turned into a passionless partnership, a romance less routine. She watched as Kody poured his time and heart into Robyn's home, her family feeling afterthoughts. And when Christine departed, Janelle acknowledged a reality she could no longer deny. Remaining wasn't strength, it was surrender. Janelle opted to take a walk quietly, away from the explosive drama that had enveloped Christine. However, her move was no less potent. She showed that even the most placid, faithful wife could no longer tolerate playing second, third, or fourth fiddle in a supposed equal marriage. Her divorce created another shockwave within the family. 2 wives lost, 2 remaining, and the man who proudly paraded himself for having a big, unified household now stood amidst the destruction of his own making. Mary's story was perhaps the most heartbreaking of all. She had been Kody's first wife, the woman who built this journey with him from the very beginning. But over time, her role shifted from partner to outsider. Her distance became emotional after years of being rejected. When she sought to re-establish the marriage, through therapy, through one-on-one talks, Kody lacked interest. He went so far as to admit, at one point, that he no longer thought of himself as married to her. It was a crushing blow for Mary. She had held on to hope for years, believing that perhaps, just perhaps, things could improve. But reality was undeniable. She was holding on to a marriage that didn't exist anymore. Her departure was not accompanied by screaming arguments or hysterical tears. Instead, it was accompanied by quiet acceptance. Mary finally released, and in releasing, she demonstrated her own type of strength, the strength to let go of a love that had already departed from her. With Christine, Janelle, and Mary departing, only one wife stayed behind, Robyn. Since the start, Robyn had been the most contentious member of the family. To some, she was just the woman whom Kody loved the most. To others, she was the one responsible for the breakup of the family. Now she was the sole wife standing beside Kody. The vision of a big plural marriage was over. The dream of oneness, of sisterhood, of equality of love, it all shattered, and all that remained was Kody and Robyn standing together. But even Robyn was not enjoying herself. She cried on camera frequently, claiming she never wanted this to happen. She envisioned sisterhood, all the wives looking out for one another. Instead, she became the face of dissension. And although she stayed, her life was forever changed. Once, he was at the center of a big family, a man who said he could juggle multiple wives and children with love and justice. He beamed in interviews, his pride showing in the harmony he said he had brought about. But by the time the separations played out, that confidence was nowhere to be found. Kody became bitter, defensive, and resentful. He attacked his wives, blaming them for not being fully committed, and couldn't bring himself to own up to his own role in the breakdown. The man who fantasized about becoming head of a powerful, plural family ended up with just one wife beside him, and a legacy tainted with heartbreak. The splits left him not as a proud patriarch, but as a man who lost almost everything he had built. The surprise of these splits didn't only remain with the Brown family, it rippled throughout fans globally. Fans who had been watching the Browns for more than a decade couldn't believe what they were watching. A family that seemed indestructible had broken down completely. Viewers argued back and forth on social media. Was it Kody's favoritism? Was it Robin's fault? Were the wives going to leave from the beginning? Everyone had something to say, but one thing was certain, the Brown family would never be the same. Christine's bold choice, Janelle's quiet independence, Mary's heartbreaking acceptance, and Robin's controversial survival all became chapters in a story that was bigger than television. It was about real women choosing self-respect over sacrifice and a man facing the consequences of imbalance. By the end of these shocking separations, the dream that started with hope and courage had ended with loss and division. The Browns, once the emblem of plural marriage, had become a cautionary example. What started out in promises of love multiplied had ended in love divided.
But even in heartbreak, there was strength. Christine taught everyone that you can walk away when you are no longer appreciated. Janelle brought to remembrance everyone that independence is strength. Mary taught everyone that releasing is often the boldest act of all. And Robin, while contentious, unveiled the truth of being the sole survivor.
The splits weren't simply the dissolution of marriages. They were the dissolution of an era, the disintegration of one of the biggest families in reality TV. And for millions of viewers, it was a reminder that no matter how large the aspiration, love cannot endure in the absence of respect, trust, and equality. Every tale has a moral, and sometimes the most harrowing conclusions remind us of the strongest truths. The Brown family saga wasn't about polygamy or reality television or conflict. It was about love, respect, and what occurs when those two evaporate. As the dust settled over the surprising breakdowns, the world started wondering, what can we learn from the rise and fall of sister wives? More than a decade, millions of viewers watched Kody Brown. His wives and their numerous children lived their lives on display. We witnessed laughter and tears, holidays and brawls, and more emotional confessions than we can count. And when the family broke apart, their saga left behind more than just TV fodder. These lessons aren't only about plural marriage, they're about all relationships, all families, and the decisions we make in search of happiness. Let us take a look at the most significant lessons from Brown's experience. One of the most deafening lessons from the Brown family experience is that respect is essential if love is to survive. Christine made that specific when she mentioned that she did not feel valued within her marriage. Janelle shared how her needs felt neglected most times. And Mary, after being rejected for decades, finally confessed that without both parties' effort, there was nothing. Regardless of how many individuals are in the relationship, one couple or a plural family, respect is key. When a person feels dismissed, overlooked, or treated like less than, the cracks start to appear. The Browns demonstrated that with a lack of respect, even love that used to be great can erode over time into resentment. And ultimately, that was one of the largest reasons why the family dissolved. Kody frequently claimed to take the wives as equals. He assured each wife that she would be treated equally and loved without bounds. But words are not as strong as actions. Gradually, one of his wives, Robin, found herself receiving more attention and affection from Kody. The others saw this. The kids saw this. And soon, the viewers saw this as well. This favoritism corrupted the whole family. Rather than unity, it bred disunity. Rather than sisterhood, it bred jealousy. The lesson is straightforward. Equality can't merely be uttered, but has to be demonstrated. Favoritism erodes trust in any family. Whether among siblings, partners, or even best friends, balance must reign. The Brown family's downfall was evidence of what happens when equality is a promise and not a practice. One of the lessons that viewers witnessed play out in real time was the power of, or the absence of, communication. The wives rarely felt like they were heard. When they spoke up, Kody would occasionally become angry or defensive. Rather than solve problems together, discussions degenerated into arguments. Gradually, walls took the place of bridges. Healthy communication is listening, validating, and striving towards solutions. But at the Browns, too many conversations concluded with blame rather than healing. Any family viewing will get the message. Silence and defensiveness kill bonds, but honesty and openness fortify them. One of the strongest scenes in the Brown family saga was when Christine walked out. To some, it was surprising. How could she just leave after all those years of marriage? But to many viewers, she made the right choice. She taught us that independence is not betrayal, it is courage. Deciding for yourself, your peace, and your happiness is not selfish. It's essential. Janelle did the same, demonstrating that power does not necessarily equate to loud aggression. At times, power is the silent choice to enter into a new life. As a group, these women taught the world that being unhappy is not loyalty, it's misery. And leaving isn't failure, it's freedom. The Browns started off rich in tradition of having plural marriage. For them, it was not only a way of life, but also a faith. They wished to demonstrate that plural families could be successful, that love would multiply rather than divide. However, with time, it became evident that tradition itself cannot keep a family intact. If there is no happiness, love, and respect, then no tradition can fill the vacuum. This isn't limited to plural marriage. It's for every tradition, cultural, religious, personal. The Browns taught us that holding on to tradition over personal happiness only brings heartbreak. Personal happiness must be prioritized. Another lesson that's often ignored is how much children are impacted by the choices of their parents. The Brown kids grew up seeing their parents battle. They felt the tension, the favoritism, and the alienation. Some of them shared how tough it was to be in a broken family. The Browns taught us that kids learn more than we realize. They see the fights, the space, and the disparity. And those experiences form their own perceptions of love and relationships. For parents, the lesson is clear. How you treat each other doesn't just affect you, it shapes the lives of your children. While fans felt connected to the Browns, it's also important to remember that television only shows part of the story. Cameras captured many moments, but not all. What we saw was both real and edited. This reminds us to be guarded in judging families, both on TV and in life. Behind every scene, there are underlying struggles, unspoken emotions, and personal battles. For audience members, the Brown family's journey is entertainment and learning, but it's also a reminder to treat real people's lives with compassion. And lastly, maybe the most crucial lesson of all, endings aren't failures. Christine didn't fail when she walked. Janelle didn't fail when she opted to be on her own. Mary didn't fail when she released. Even Kody and Robin, standing all by themselves, didn't necessarily fail. Their marriages failed, but their lives didn't. Christine became happy again. Christine became happy again. Janelle celebrated her freedom. Mary embarked on new things. And even Kody and Robin, though faulted, started a new episode together. The moral of the lesson is strong. Each ending is also a beginning. And sometimes the boldest thing you can do is shut the door on one chapter in order to open another. The final reflection as the saga of sister wives continues on, one thing is guaranteed. The Browns have eternally left their footprints on the world of reality television and in the hearts of millions. They taught us to love in its finest moments and worst. They taught us about the wonder of large families and the hurt of promises broken. And through it all, they taught us a few things about respect, communication, equality, and courage. The Brown family's journey ended in separations, but their tale goes on to inspire talks of love, family, and the choices that make us. In the end, it is not the collapse, it's the lessons. Lessons that remind us all, without respect, love cannot survive.
Without equality, unity cannot last. And without happiness, tradition is just a prison. The Browns' dream may have ended, but the lessons they left behind will live on.